Scotland has a rich and interesting history, full of kings and queens, knights and peasants. But they're all long gone now. Or are they? Stirling itself has a pretty colourful history, and it's hard to find a building that is not supposedly haunted. From the Stirling Arcade, to the toll booth, and of course the castle itself. Stirling seems to be full of ghosts, so to learn more we spoke to actor and author David Kinnaird, more commonly referred to as the Happy Hangman, who runs the ghost tour around Stirling.
My interest isn't so much with the paranormal, but with the myths and legends associated with it. With something like the Ghost Walk, you're mixing popular stories, mythology, and local history. And I always find it quite telling. You learn more about the character of a community by the stories it creates about itself, rather than the straight history. Almost certainly. Many of the stories will evolve over time. They'll reflect the mores and the prejudices of the communities in which they live. In Stirling, for example, you have the story of the Black Lady. Traditionally, she would be the Baobab Seath, the nearest thing you get in Scottish mythology to a vampire, a black-garbed fairy seductress, who, if you take anything from her that is not offered, would drain the energy of life from you. By the 17th century in Stirling, that story had been adapted into the story of a ghostly nun who died of shame while seeking out her secret priestly lover. And anyone who looks into her eyes would also suffer the same fate as the Baobab Seath. So they've replaced an older story with what is essentially anti-Catholic propaganda. So stories adapt, stories change over time. That really depends on the individual audience. With a young audience, with kids, with people who are light-hearted, some stories like that of Deacon Robertson, the subject of a 16th century amputation whose ghost is said to hop around the graveyard seeking his missing limb. That always gets a laugh from the kids. Blind Alec, a nice dramatic story of a local blind preacher who is said to have battled the devil on the Ladies' Hill and vanished in a puff of smoke. Again, it depends on the audience. If it's a serious audience, they'll get serious tales. If it's a light-hearted audience, anything goes. I've been around a great many people who have, but I haven't seen anything myself. For 4 years, my office in the toll booth back in the early 1990s, when we ran living history programmes in Stirling, was the condemned cell. Supposedly the single most haunted room in the whole of Stirling. I saw nothing. As someone who spent his professional life in graveyards, haunted buildings, studying and writing books on the subject, I sometimes feel positively cheated. I have no particular belief or disbelief. I think healthy skepticism is always a good idea. The only way to know for sure is to see a ghost or be a ghost. And although I do the latter professionally, I'm really in no hurry to follow either path. If the question I normally ask in response when people ask me if I believe in ghosts is, what is a ghost? Does it know it's a ghost? Is it sentient? Is it a memory? Is it something that's simply trapped like an electrical pulse in quartz that repeats under a certain set of circumstances? That's the principle of stone theory that became quite popular with parapsychologists and physicists in the 70s. And was the subject of Nigel Neal's brilliant 1974 television play, The Stone Tape. We don't know. The chances are a lot of what are reported as ghost encounters and ghost sightings have happened, but they are misunderstood and misrecognised natural occurrences. Whether or not they are actually spirits, well, that's another matter entirely.
We also asked for the opinions of some local students, and here's what they had to say on the matter.
No, I don't believe in supernatural beings. I'd say that because I haven't really had an experience with any ghosts recently. I'm not friends with any ghosts, so I'll say I don't believe in ghosts.
No, I don't believe in ghosts. I've never really had any paranormal experience to back it up, you know.
Yes, I do believe in ghosts. I was sitting in my bedroom and I keep all my makeup in a little jar, like all my makeup brushes. And I was sitting on the bed and suddenly one of them just flew out. It just fell out, and that's impossible because it's in a little jar. And normally they wouldn't fall out, but they did, like one of them. It wasn't that the whole jar tipped, it was just one single brush that suddenly landed on the floor with a bumping noise. And that was really weird.
I suppose they can. I mean, in a sense, maybe history comes alive if you're like in a scary castle or something and you're being walked around by a tour guide and they tell you the stories of previous experiences with guests and they say how ghosts have affected them and things. So yes, maybe it does bring history alive.
Yeah, I guess so, because you know everyone loves a bit of horror, I guess. So. Yeah, I think they do.
Absolutely, yeah. I personally enjoy stories more if there are ghosts or paranormal activities involved.
As you can see, people have a variety of different opinions on the subject, but is there really any way of knowing what's out there? That's up to you.